Oh, now I
There,
can hear you.
there we go. Now we got some stuff, and of course I printed out your questions, and I took some notes on there, and then I left it sitting on my computer at home. So anyway,
That's okay.
that's his life. I was just gonna look back up with some of it because there was a couple of things we wanted to I wanted to cover, but I don't remember what the hell it was. So, read me the question, and I'll answer it.
All
So
right. So, one of the things I've observed through comments and people asking me is there seems to be a lot of hype around sourcing cars through the Japanese car auctions. But
sure.
is it the best way to search for a specific car, or would you recommend other places as well, just to
Well,
cover more
I mean,
bases?
yeah, I mean the Japanese auction does a really good job, or of being able to. It's basically the main source of getting cars in Japan, and they. I don't want to say a really good job. It's probably they do a pretty good job of describing cars and going through and checking stuff and grading them, but it's not the be all end all. And the problem is, of course, is that if you think that a grade four, grade five car is always the best car, and an R car is the worst car, then you're wrong because you haven't seen as many of them up close as I have. So, the problem is that some people live and die by the auction stuff. And there's some abnormalities, in some of the cars, and some abnormalities in some of the things. But the uh the truth is that it's not the only thing. It is a good thing, but it's not the only thing when it comes down to grading a car. So now you have some other options. Obviously, there's car dealers and things like that over there. But you're always best if you're going to be buying a car from auction. You're best to have somebody locally on the ground have a look at the car for you.
That makes
You know,
sense.
especially if you're paying any kinds of real money for it or anything.
Right.
Because you may run into something that was not either on the sheet, or they graded it weird, or something like that, where you can have, again, you can have a car that's an R car, and it could be an R car because they put a body kit on it or something, or somebody painted it or something like that. Now, generally speaking, it's had an accident, but you know, we're dealing with 25 and 30-year-old jet cars from Japan. I mean, honestly, just about everything's probably hit something at one point, and everything has probably had some pain at some point. So, um,
Sure.
it just, and for all kinds of different reasons, because again, these are 25 or 30-year-old cars. So,
Right.
um, some people put a little too much weight into it. So, and just kind of, again, live and die by those numbers. So,
Okay. If someone were to come to you specifically or your company specifically and say, I would like to get, and this is what I have here, a 1998 25 GT 34, what would the process be of sourcing the car, and what would you need from the customer to kind of narrow down the search? Like,
sure, sure. So, I mean, on that particular car, actually, the first thing that I did is look up how many they made, because occasionally people ask for some stuff, and there's like 12 of them made. And you have to be realistic with somebody and say, look, honestly, I'm not going to be able to find exactly what you want. I wrote down how many. That was part of my notes. I think there was about 660 GT, the turbo versions of those cars, and I think there was 112 of the non-turbo version of them, because you wrote GT, and
yeah,
so again, it depends. You have to be clear with what the customer wants. So, because they may not know, they may not even understand exactly what they want and why they want it. So,
sure.
somebody may be good with an automatic and somebody may not be. And then obviously, it's relatively popular to, what I call like sex change on the cars from auto to manual. So we do see that done on cars. So we need to know, like, again, what somebody's really looking for, what they actually want.
Right.
So, again, and when you're looking at that car, about 660 cars made, almost 25 years ago. You're definitely, as you get narrower and narrower and narrower down, your choices on car starts to be like, hey, if you say I want this car and it has to have, 30,000 kilometers, and I want to pay $10,000, I'm gonna be like, I don't waste my time. I mean, because we're not going to find that car. We're not going to find it for that money. We're not going to find that car for in that mileage for that money. It's just, you're unrealistic with what you want. If you become realistic, then we can talk. Other than that, it's just not something we're going to do.
Okay.
And so, again, they have to have a realistic budget. They have to have realistic, ideas and goals and all that. And again, everybody, would you take a different color? Do you want not red? Do you want, would white be okay? Or if it has to be red, then I'm going to tell you, like, okay, I can probably start to search, or we can do auction stuff. We can search individually. But if that's exactly what you want, you're gonna have to pay whatever prices that I'm able to find it for.
Right. Sure.
So, and again, that all changes. That all is, variable, basically, right? So,
Yeah. Well, because when you, because I use I think two or three different sites to be able to look at the auctions because they all have like different pieces of data on them, and
yep,
but there always seems to be like the ability to search basically not so much by model but also just by chassis code.
yep,
Um, and so if someone just said, I would like, I don't know the chassis code for like an S14 or an S15, but like if I
that's
want,
it.
is the chassis code? Uh,
S14, S15, yeah, you can. That's what it is. That's the chassis code.
oh,
So,
because I just expected it to be a little longer for some reason.
nope. No, and
Uh,
that's it. I mean, those are all, all those cars are. So you got like BNR 32,
yeah.
B BCNR 33, S14, S15, S16, S16. Yeah, that doesn't exist yet. Sorry. But some of the other stuff is JZX 100, JZX 90, all
Yeah.
those kinds of things too. So, JZA 80. Yeah, that's all. That's the chassis code. That's it. I mean, so, and
Okay.
it starts there, and then the rest of the digits are for at least Japanese, for JDM Japanese cars. The build sequence number of whatever the car is. So,
Right.
but getting back to your car, like searching, you said you were searching for cars. You searched for a certain
Yeah,
vehicle.
like you can search for like a chassis code specifically instead,
Yep.
and some codes seem to warrant a lot of results, and then it also includes the different trim levels of that chassis code as well.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So, well, I mean, that's, again, there's even, when you start to get into the ERs and all those things, some of the customer knowledge of what is available and, engines, transmissions, all those kinds of things, there's more than, if somebody just says R34, well, there's a lot more than just a single R34.
Right.
You've got everything from two doors to four doors to automatics. You've got RB20s, and I mean, you just got so many different varieties. So the customer has to be somewhat educated, because if somebody looks at one of those cars and says, "Oh, I can get an R34 for 10 grand," well, they're not looking at a GTR. They want a GTR, but they're looking at something else, and
Yeah.
that's not the same price range. So, in the same, if the car is um, a non-turbo or automatic transmission, or it has other problems, and the prices are going to vary, based on that. So,
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, I mean, like 10 years ago, the prices for all these cars are very, very different. So
yeah,
now,
well, yeah, I mean, it's desirability, and
yeah,
people of a certain age, and basically, every year cars are getting wrecked, cars, go overseas, and cars become part of a collection that they're just not purchasable out of.
yeah,
So, I mean, there's certain cars that are out there in the world that just not available for sale, and
yeah,
they're in somebody's collection now, and there's the thing is that there are, at least when we're talking about these kinds of cars and these kinds of things, is that you're 127 million people in Japan, and you have 330 million people in the US. And even if obviously you don't even have that many people in the US that are really interested in the cars, um you still have a lot of potential buyers for a relatively small number of vehicles.
Yeah.
So, and you got to remember, like a lot of these other like pedestrian, plain Jane kind of cars in Japan, they're relatively disposable. They just get rid of them, and so they've either gone overseas or they've gone, or they just have been crushed. I mean, I mean, where do you think all of these, RB20, RB25, RB26 swaps, and all the stuff that's available, all these engines? I mean, majority of them are from wrecked cars and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, and when the prices obviously, and again, even it gets back to some of this pricing stuff, but, depending on the cost of something, fixing it versus just, parting it out. And so, I mean, we're starting to reach the point where, you can almost afford to fix anything because, the car's worth so much money versus like, before when the car wasn't necessarily worth that much money, it was better just to part it out, So
Yeah.
it's just shifts. It shifts. All that stuff shifts. So
Have you had more? Well, okay. First half of this question is kind of dumb because I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is. But have you had more
yeah,
interest into Skyline GTRs lately than in the past? Would you say
I
approaching
would say
the?
so. Yes, yes. It would definitely. The crazy part about it is, I mean, somebody the like so, obviously deal with a lot of owners and I deal with a lot of groups and forums and all that stuff for years and years and years. And you run into guys that say, "Man, there's 5 in my town" or something like that. And I mean, they live in some small town and they think that that's a thing. And I'm like, well, in my town of 12 million people, I never see any on the road,
Right.
and I live in a town of 12 million people here in LA or whatever, however you want to count LA and the surrounding area and all of that stuff. And so, and it's like, obviously, there weren't enough skylines made from the beginning to cover 12 million people, for
Yeah.
everybody to have one. And obviously that's not a realistic thing either. But still, again, I still run into people every single day, even around here. And I've been dealing with these cars here in California for 20 years that tell me that, that's their favorite car in the world, and you can't buy them here in the States every day, you know? It's and so, every single day we're telling people, we're showing people, we're explaining how you can get them and all these other things. And every single day we're talking to basically dozens and dozens of people that are interested in the cars. And so, people, get jobs, they move on, they just they get, they watch a video, they get a hair up their ass and decide that that's what they want to do. And or some cars is what they want, and we buy and sell cars. So
Would you say there's been a increase due to the fact that a lot of these cars probably have exited a lot of people's budget range at this point? Would you say there's been more of a increase in interest into the non GTR Skylines?
nope.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
No, actually, opposite. We're actually, the more expensive they are, the more interest we're having.
Really?
Yeah,
It's not what I would expected. That's very fascinating.
yeah, no, and yeah, it's we don't get that much interest in non-GTR. I mean, probably, too, what we do, but we don't get that much interest in non-GTR Skylines. But GTRs, yeah, no problem. I mean, cars, we're, selling stuff. I don't know what I want to say on video, but let's just say over $300,000 cars. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I've seen a couple Series One base GTRs being sold in the Japanese mainland for upwards of 130. So I don't even really want to think about
right.
what the O2 NER models go for.
Yeah, and your and your midnight purple twos and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, again, if you pay attention to some people on the internet, they'll tell you it never happened, and I'm like, well, that's cool. You believe whatever you want to believe. So Yeah. The bank account says differently. So, right. So,
So this was an interesting question that someone asked me because I guess it wasn't clear to them as to what 25-year-old vehicles are exempt from.
sure, sure. So when you import a car, there's more than a single government agency to deal with. So the people that control the entry is customs.
Okay.
So customs are the guys who are the police or the gatekeepers or whatever you want to say. So in order for you to import or have a car legally, you have to meet customs requirements. So they want you to pay tariff, duties, and all that stuff. And obviously that's more like Treasury Department stuff. But again, customs is your gatekeeper. So
Okay.
you have to pay tariff and stuff on the car. It's 2.5% of the value, and plus processing fees and the rest of the shit. About three, you end up paying about 3.5% of the value of the car. Um, and then you have NHTSA regulations. So actually, let's start with EPA because EPA is a lot more interesting. So EPA says at 21 years old, a vehicle is EPA exempt in original configuration.
Okay.
So now this is something that screws with most people because they say, well, what about 25? And I said, I know, but 21, the EPA says original configuration, it's exempt. So, and EPA is also calendar year. They don't do it by date of manufacturer. So a car, it was built in 99, in 2024, it's exempt automatically. But, but, but it is not NHTSA exempt. It doesn't become NHTSA exempt until it's 25 years old. So typical government, you have one agency that says 21 is exempt, one agency that says 25 is exempt. And so it doesn't, they don't preempt each other. You have to meet both requirements in order to legally import a car.
Sure.
So, and again, there's some complexities related to that, to registration. People don't understand, like, it's not like a simple answer. It's not, there's not only the single agency, there's actually multiple agencies you have to satisfy. And if you can't satisfy them all, then you don't meet all the requirements, so
Right.
you can't have the car. So anyway, it's all the weirdness. I mean, because somebody says, "Oh, I don't have emissions where I live," or whatever, and it's like, well, it's got nothing to do with emissions. It's got everything to do with, the federal agencies and stuff like that. So
Yeah, because in the comment thread on one of my videos, I can't remember which one it was, obviously pertaining to this topic, they were arguing about whether a car could legally be catless or not. Basically,
well,
after.
no, that's the EPA requirement, and tampering with emissions equipment is is not allowed by the EPA.
Okay.
I don't care where you live. I don't care if you don't have smog where you live. That doesn't mean anything. The EPA governs everything in the whole entire U.S. If you are in the USA, you're governed by federal regulations. The EPA is a federal agency. Your local regulations are what you call in-use testing. And so if locally they don't do in-use testing, that doesn't exempt you from federal requirements.
Right.
And so the biggest thing related to that is that don't perjure yourself. Don't incriminate yourself. But
Yeah.
the problem is that most people don't understand what that means. And they're like, no, man, I can do whatever I want. They're never going to check. And I'm like, you're right. Until you go out and say, this is what I did, or this is what I'm doing, or I took all the cats off my car, blah, blah, blah. And if somebody wants to make an example of you, you just perjured yourself.
Yep.
And it's a $27,000 fine per incident or something like that.
Yeah.
So look up the Diesel brothers, like those guys got busted. They had like a $5 million fine or something like that. And again, there's a bunch of it's called the Clean Air Act. And so anybody can look up something called the Clean Air Act. And again, This is federal. This is not local. And people don't understand, like, oh, again, I don't have smog. Doesn't matter. What you don't want to do is perjure yourself. Don't perjure yourself. So, you know, the and again, that people just want to prove how badass they are and how much they don't need to pay attention to regulations. So,
Right. And the last kind of main question before, if you want to bring up any other topics, is this is more there's more a quote than a question, but why can't I import a car that's not quite 25 and then just store it in my garage and never drive it?
because the gatekeeper is customs. Because in order to import a car legally into the US, you have to fill out what's called an HS7. You have to call out a 3520-1. What exactly you're going to put on that documentation? Because the car either needs to meet standards, needs to be over 25, you have to have an exemption. Those are all the things for it.
Right.
So it's like it's like going into a liquor store when you're 18 and saying, I'm going to buy this right now, but I'm not going to consume it until I'm 18. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You know, sorry, it's 21 to buy liquor, it's 18 to buy cigarettes. This is what it is. So it doesn't matter what if you tell them what you're going to do. What all that really matters is what what the regulations say.
Yeah.
So and the regulations say no. So
Okay. Are there any other things you want to bring up that you think people should know before we move on to the next?
about importation,
Yeah.
again, it's really complicated. It's complicated and it's difficult, and you have a whole bunch of different government agencies that all tell you different things, and none of them necessarily know each other's regulations, and that's a problem. So
Okay. I always tell people that it's good to kind of, if you are importing a car and it is over 25, to have someone that knows the processes be there with them at the very least, so that they can dot all the i's and cross all the t's, because you don't want something to go wrong.
yeah, I mean, and it's really easy to go wrong. I think yesterday I was trying to help a guy who was trying to do some stuff in California with a car, and he's going through talking about all the frustrations. He sold a car like 8 months ago, and dealing with dealing with the California, and not able to get the car titled here. And if he would have talked to me 8 months ago, I would have got his problem handled. But or if I would have imported the car for him, I would have handled it for him. But instead, he goes around, and a lot of people think they know what they're doing. And again, some people are like, "Well, my time's free," and he's, "Well, okay, if you assume your time is free, that's fine. But this is what I do, and if you pay me money, then I can fix it." So, but this is what I do. So,
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can save you 8 months of messing around. And so. And again, everybody, especially younger people, obviously, right? They're like, "Oh, I can do this or I can do that," and it's like, fine. But
All right. Well, we can move on to the next thing, which is kind of more. I'm not sure how, now that I think about it, but it's more top rank specific than the conversation we just had.
okay,
Um, like, so for instance, a customer is either bringing a car into the country through you or is
yep,
buying a car in your U.S. inventory,
yep,
and they want to do like either body work or
sure.
engine stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, it would obviously depend on if it's like in Japan or here. So I mean, over in Japan, like if we're buying a car for somebody, it depends because we have Japanese inventory.
Hmm.
We have the ability, obviously, to buy auction. We have the ability to, buy cars from dealerships or off individuals, private party ownership kind of stuff. And so then if the car's in Japan, I mean, we can do obviously a lot of stuff over there in Japan,
Sure.
and we are even doing some things for people, Nismo Motor Factory, and we're doing some things with the guys from Built by Legends. I don't know if you saw their R32. Um, it's kind of a different deal, kind of a different topic, but I mean,
generally don't get that far into it here in the US.
Okay.
We've built a couple of cars, done some stuff for customers. It's just we're mostly in the business of selling cars, not really modifying them. But, we get into the California side of it for people, and that, we bring cars into California compliance,
Yeah.
but your other stuff not as much. It's to me personally, I think it's a distraction for our business, but we have done things for customers when they've asked us. So
Okay. So if someone wanted to um, have, like, for instance,
wheels and suspension, and yeah, I mean
yeah.
we've done stuff. Yeah, I mean before we send it to them, we get some wheels from Mackin. Like Mackin will have something in stock, and we know those guys over there pretty well, and so get some of those, get some tires mounted, get it put on a car. Somebody wants to put suspension on it. It's again, it's all possible. It's more of a case by case basis.
Sure.
It's not something that I to tell you the truth, most of the time it's more hassle than it's worth. There's a lot of effort that goes into those things. So,
So
you
it
know,
really, there's not like a there's a threshold somewhere that where it becomes, we can do this too. You might want to take this to someone else, sort
yeah,
of thing. Yeah.
yeah. I just, I mean, we may change our mind in the future. It's always a possibility. It's just, we're more in the business of, we're buying and selling cars
Okay.
and like modifying cars and doing things like that, and everybody's individual preferences on cars and things. Um, it's just, I'm not really set up that well for it. So
Okay.
I'd rather it requires a lot of time to do it. So to do it, right, so the customer's happy. So
Yeah. And this one, I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't realize that you offered financing on any of your cars, but
six
it
fifty or above, 10% down, history of payments. So we're actually hmm, we're working on financing some stuff that's still in Japan.
okay.
So no, there's some weirdness with that. Obviously, I want to make sure like if we're doing anything that the customer's always protected and
Yeah.
insured and all that, and so that because anything can happen to us or to anybody else or all of that through. So I want to make sure like before we go too deep into like at first it would definitely only be previous customers. It wouldn't be anybody like a new customer. It'd be somebody who we dealt with in the past and we know pretty well. So and
For a
it's
car
something.
from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, like to finance like an R34 or something sitting over there, that kind of thing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but it's just, I mean, the problem is obviously, the customer doesn't have the car, they'd be paying on it, da da da, all those kinds of things. It's a little bit of risky for them, and I just want to make sure, like, all the protections are in place before we kind of put it a little bit further out to the general populace, because again, it's if I'm doing it, I just want to make sure like when the car does turn 25 and it's able to come to the States, like the guy can, it's obviously it's coming here and everything else happens. So, but yeah. So,
Okay. This is more kind of, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what would be the most expensive car you've ever sold? You don't even have to say.
let's just say it's an R34. So,
Okay.
um, so, and yeah, R34, well over 300. So,
That sounds about right.
yeah. Yeah.
uh what would you say takes up the majority of your inventory at any given time, whether it's in the US or Japan?
Well, I mean, we mostly GTR, right? So we're sitting right here. So we got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I 13, 14. There's 14 GTRs that I can see just right here. So, and we have about 40 or 50 cars, and we have a mix of other things, but mostly GTR. So,
Okay.
and that's
Um
R32, R33, R34, but yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
um, you already kind of covered this. That you sometimes, if you have parts in stock, you can install them for customers and stuff like that. Do you ever sell like motors or transmissions or components related to those? No. Okay.
Not interested in doing it. Yeah. I have parts. I mean, I have stuff uh, like windshields. But here's the thing: I have more GTRs than most people, and I have customers to support. We've probably sold at least 10% of the GTRs in the U.S., something like that. All the cars that are here. And so the thing is that I need to be able to support my customers. And so if you're
Sure.
not a customer, I don't really want to support you. I mean, it's a harsh truth for some people, but the truth is, if you've spent your money with me, I want to make sure I provide you a better service and I have all the things that you want or need.
Right.
Versus some guy who went to somebody else and bought a car cheaper and now needs all these parts because the car he bought was a piece of shit.
Right.
So, I'd rather, if my customer gets in an accident or, whatever, gets rock chip or whatever it is, I'd rather make sure I have those parts to support him. So,
Right.
same thing with, engines, all those other kinds of things. There's places that sell engines. Um, and again, anything that I have, I'm just not really interested in doing it because it just doesn't make financial sense for me. So
Like you said before, it's more kind of like a distraction.
it is a distraction. Yeah. So, um, again, I have stuff, but I'd rather just point them to other people. Here, go here and buy it off of them. So,
Okay. Are there anything? Is there anything like, for instance? Oh, here's a good question. This could go into the same topic as last time, but we'll make it this one. Before coming to you to do business, what would you recommend people kind of prepare themselves with to kind of be prepared to let you know what they're looking for before they kind of ask for something without realizing what they're asking for?
I mean, have a look and see if there's, anything in there that range and the prices and all of that. I mean, they can obviously talk to us about anything in particular, but people are, we obviously get a lot of calls on like the R34 M spec, and I think most people are pretty shocked at the price when we tell them. So, um, you know, but the truth is that we're selling them at those prices. So, um, but I mean, I don't know if some people are, maybe where they're getting some of their information, they're thinking, oh, I can buy this car for 20 grand or 30 grand, and when you start throwing 300 plus numbers at them, they're they're not really prepared for it. So I mean,
Right.
I do have buyer's guides, for the different GTRs and things. I have buyer's guides on some other cars. Where hopefully try to teach people. I mean, these are 25 and 30-year-old, plus cars. I mean, they're not brand new. So, some people are thinking that they may be buying brand new cars, and they're not. So, they need to be prepared for all of the things that are related to 25 and 30-year-old Japanese cars. Majority of
Right.
them are pretty reliable, and then, people want to try to make them unreliable. So, but, that's all up to them.
Excellent. Is there anything else you might want to say to someone that wants to work with you guys before we move on to?
We have a lot of information on the website, but by all means, I tried to put information out. We have FAQs, all those kinds of things, but everybody has different situations, different questions. So
Yeah. Well,
if it's something that somebody wants, or obviously, again, like, I mean, you hope people read and understand that stuff. But I mean, still, every single day we get 5 calls from somebody that wants to import a 20 2005 something, and you're like, well, we're still going to be quite a ways, 2030 on that car or something,
right, and
so.
that's going to be really close to that 2035 deadline of no more new internal combustion engines as well.
Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't really affect us or anything to do with us, because again, that's new combustion engine stuff. That's not,
Yeah.
used. I mean, there's always a possibility there could be changes, but overall, they're not going to be getting rid of internal combustion engine. They're just not going to be selling new ones. And even
Yeah.
then, they have to obviously be able to, the technology needs to be in place and the consumers need to be buying the cars and all those kinds of things. So all of those things have to happen in order for that to happen, in order for that to be a realistic thing that does happen. So,
Yeah. Well, and another resource that I don't know if it's, I would say it's still a good resource to have is to, do you still have the site showordisplay.com?
yeah, that's me.
So hilariously, not long after I graduated high school, I want to say in like 2016, 2017, I emailed the email that was attached to that website. And I remember you answered my question pretty quickly. There's a lot of information on that site for people that are very curious as to how show or display works and what the requirements are and why some cars are on there and some aren't and all that sort of stuff. And
Right.
usually the answer turns out just being if it meets all the other requirements, it's just because no one has like made an application with one of those cars or something like that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a little bit of it, you get these questions from people, but why? But why? And you're like, well, because it hasn't been done. And it's like I can't explain to you exactly why. It just just that it just nobody's tried it before, nobody's done it before. That's why, and
Yeah.
so like, well, this car should be, and okay, then put it on the list, put an application. Oh, I don't have time for it. Well, then it's never going to get on there either, is it? If you don't do it, then who's going to do it? So,
Right.
that's the truthful answer. So, and obviously they only have so much capability or capacity there, at the NHTSA for show display cars, and there's a process. I mean, you can, if you want, anybody's able to do this. So you can do a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act, and get the full reason why any particular car was approved or denied. And so if you want to look into the thoughts behind why the NHTSA approved something or didn't, then you can look there. I mean, you can call them and you can talk to them, but they're probably only going to tell you so much. So
Sure.
agency, they only want to do so many things. So, but again, overall, it hasn't been done because nobody's done it.
Yeah. I
Who's gonna-
remember I remember a long time ago it used to be that on their site when you looked at when you downloaded the file that had all the information on the cars that were approved and eligible, when you got to Nissan, it said Nissan Skyline GTR early production V spec, and
Yeah,
I had no idea what that meant until I think
me
you
either.
cleared it up.
Yeah, no, it took a long time. The thing is, I talked to Dick Merritt, who's the guy who approved it, and I asked him what it was when I put in my application for my Nismo, and I was like, "What car is that?" Because I know these cars real well, and what got approved? Because I mean, I didn't do that. Some military guy did it, Navy guy. Because I have the FOIA on that car, on the Midnight Purple car. So on the early V-Spec early edition. So somebody put it in, the NHTSA approved it. Why did they approve it? Because they did. Right? Some
Right.
people want every some people want every answer like exactly laid out to them, and it's like, if you want to, that's up to you. You go and you find all that information. You talk to the NHTSA, you file FOIA, and you'll get all that information exactly why they did it. So if it's that important to you, you can find it out. If it's
Right.
not that important to you, and if you want to complain that I'm like giving you a full answer, well, they just fucking whine at me, whatever. So
uh Give me one second, Missy. I need to. Oh my goodness. A lot of people ask me why I would personally go with a Series 1 base GTR rather than like one of the ones with the active LSDs.
right.
And I told them, well, my understanding is that the mechanical diff is better for high horsepower applications than the active one.
It is.
Um, would you want to elaborate on that? Like, I remember I asked you, like, mechanical or active.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so the Tesla system, all-wheel drive. So a differential, how it works, right, is it basically, let's just say most cars have an open differential. And so open differential means that each wheel on each side can spin independently of each other,
Sure.
and it makes the car turn a lot easier. Think about, if you have something with, we'll go extreme, like a welded diff, where basically both wheels turn the same speed no matter what. Okay, welded. So when you have a welded diff, the car does not want to turn, but obviously you've got the most traction for acceleration, right? And so for drifting, for stuff like that, guys, weld the diffs, or for drag racing, they weld the diffs and stuff like that. And so then, back from there, you have some kind of mechanical diff, some kind of, gears or clutches or ramps and all these other things that are inside a differential, in order for you to have, the best of both worlds, right? Or closer to the best of both worlds, which is the best of both worlds is that it's open when you want it to be open, and it's closed or locked when you want it to be locked. And so the active diff, what it does is actually it's tied to the TPS. It's tied to throttle position. And when you're off throttle, the differential is open. And when you are on throttle, what happens is that it takes pressure from the Atessa pump. So the Atessa pump is a hydraulic pump, high pressure pump, that supplies pressure to the all-wheel drive system, to the transfer case in the center, to lock up a clutch. And shit, I actually have one right here. Let's see. This is actually a Altec. It's an automatic. So this is a transfer case here, and so back in here, inside this piece right here, there's a little rod, and by pushing on this rod, there's a clutch in here that locks up, and locking this clutch up, there's a chain here. And so normally your power, right, it comes out of your engine, through your transmission, through your transfer right here, and out the back to your drive shaft. This clutch, if it's open, basically this chain in here is just kind of free spinning. As it locks up, it drives the front. And so it drives the front prop shaft, and that drives your front wheels. So when we get into your active diff, you have the same thing happening, but on the differential. But it's just lockup. It's just lockup of the differential, which obviously the more locked up it is, the more the car wants to go straight, and the more that it doesn't want to turn. And the more that it's open, the more that it will turn. I was going to see if I had any V-specs here, and I don't. Not close. Let's see. So, let me see. It's hard to see. It's too hard to see on this car. Anyway, it's too hard to see it. So, let's. But basically, again, it's like lockup of the rear diff. And so the thing is that because it has TPS as an input and all of that, and because it uses hydraulic pressure, it's a little weird for most people. They just want to, once you start to go big power and things like that, you kind of go to the point where you just put a mechanical diff in it and just deal with it mechanically versus hydraulic electrically. So
Okay. I think I already know your answer to this because I think you said this to Matt Farah when you did a podcast with him a couple of years ago. What would you say is your favorite generation of Skyline GTR? This one right here. Yeah. So I remembered correctly.
So actually, let's see. Well, so that's one of mine, right? And the other one of mine is over here. So this is my other one.
Okay, so you have the blue and the gray.
Yeah, gunmetal. Yep. So this is my Nismo. So this is Nismo number 500. So I imported it back in 2012 under Shore Display.
I
So
remember that. I remember you. I
yeah,
think you posted a video of it when you were driving it to a show.
I probably have, but yeah. So this is, I mean, I've had the car again since 2012. So, and then that other blue one up there, that's another car. It's not really, that one's kind of it became a demo car and da 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 and all that stuff. Now, obviously, we're in the business of selling GTRs, and so I have my Nismo. I was sort of building my Nismo for a while. I did some stuff to it. You know, it had built engine, OS88, a bunch of other stuff. And then the R33 was going to turn 25 years old. And so then somewhere out here, there is an R33 that I was going to turn into Big Bird 2.
Oh yeah.
So I can only go probably so far before the some of the stuff stops working. But so
Uh-oh.
all of this stuff with COVID obviously has screwed all of that up quite a lot. And you know, I will eventually finish it. So I mean, that car is going to be a little bit silly, right? So this car is fast. This car is good. You know, I take it out to Ars Day. I drive it on the drive it on the track, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a good car. It's a fun car. Um, it's one of the faster heritage cars out here. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to uh, I wanted to have an R33 that was faster, and so and uh, and the the sorry, Craig's here dropping off the car, picking up the car.
Oh, that's a funny coincidence.
Well, it's not. It's Craig Seidel, Rent JDM. So
Oh,
and so he's the sorry man, I got off track. I got to start over.
let's see. So R32 is my favorite generation, that's for sure. I like the smallness, the rawness of it. You know, Group A, all of that is something that I really like. I really like what they did with that car originally. You know, in '89, R32 was pretty much unbeatable. It was it was supercar, hypercar levels of performance for what it was. You know, they're real fast, real easy to drive fast, and they took very well to modifications. And so, back then, originally, yeah, not quite the same. So remember I said about Walmart. So we looked up on Google and we were like looking for some 275 3519 tires. And Taka finds this and he says, just put it on Google. And it was like Yokohama S Drive 275 3519 on Walmart for $94.75 each. And I was like, well, it's probably wrong. I wonder what's going to show up when we order it, but let me order it anyway. And so we did. And in case you didn't know, not only are they not Yokohamas, they're actually Bridgestones, and they're Blizziks, and they're 170 or 185 60 15. So what I ordered is not exactly what I received, but we'll see. We'll see because I asked them to replace it. I'll see what comes to replace it. We'll see if eventually we either get the right ones or we just get refunded. So because they should be a couple of $100 each for a 19. So, but such is life. Back to the cars, back to R33s. So I want to build a fast demo car, and so I have RB30. I have some pretty big turbos. I have OS88 sequential transmission. I have a bunch of little bits and pieces, and the plan was, obviously in 2020 to use it as a demo car and all that stuff. I was going to paint it yellow, do all the other things with it, and 2020 went off the rails. So and now it's 2021 and I'm still kind of not really finished with the car. I do have the majority of the parts for it. I just don't have all of them yet, but at some point it will get put together. It will make good power, and it will be yellow, and it will have crazy graphics on it, and it will be Big Bird 2 until we get the next demo car after that. So
Right. So if someone were to say, "Here's a blank check, build the car you want with no limitations," what would you build?
I mean, I would just buy a Group A car.
Would you do anything with it, or would you just keep it as is, or like restore it or something?
I'd buy a Group A car, race car, real race car. You can't build a car as good as a proper race car with heritage and everything. You just it's but I've built what I consider some of the best R32s around, and I built some pretty nasty R32s. This R33 they're building is I don't want to say it's a blank check car, but it's got a lot of the right stuff. So I mean,
Okay.
it's a again, it's a 3 liter with a bunch of cam sequential
Oh,
trans,
is that a
and
is that a 30 block then?
RB30 block, yeah,
Oh,
RB30
okay. I was
block.
that was the question that was going to follow. That was which
Right,
block would you choose if you could choose?
26.
Okay, but you
I, I,
said
I'm doing a 30 now, and I'll see how much I like it. But I mean, I like the 26 and revving the piss out of it.
okay.
I like doing it with the revs. I I got a lot of time in 26 cars. I don't have that much time in 30 cars. I mean, everybody says 30, all the torque, all the rest of the stuff, but I still really like the 26. I like that high revving, I mean, and I guess what I think anyway is that people who don't see that on the 26 don't know how to rev the car right. I hear people say, "Oh, I shifted 7,000 RPM, which is like 6,400 RPM on the tack." I mean, you're not even getting into the meat of the power of the car. You're not giving it the opportunity to do what it's supposed to do. So, it's a short stroke, short rod engine that does it with RPM. And so now RPM is a little scary because obviously your loads and all those things go up, and your lives go up. Your life goes down exponentially with revs, right? But I mean, what's the point in what's the point in not taking it to where it should go? So
Right. Um, yeah, that was something I very quickly figured out with my current car, which I bought a few months ago. I got an E46 M3, and
okay,
it became very clear to me that that thing likes to rev fairly high, so it spends
right,
most of its time at least 3,500 RPM.
right, yeah. I mean, inline six are pretty inherently smooth, and you're I mean, people talk about some crazy stuff, harmonics and all this other things, and I'm like, man, a lot of what these people say, I've either never seen or, it just seems like, for lack of a better term, bullshit to me. So, you know, because I don't drive one car, I don't have one car. I deal with some people, and they have one car, two cars, three cars, something like that. I mean, I've had hundreds of GTRs, hundreds, and I was crew chief on the race team, and I've done all this other stuff with cars, and it's like, that's cool. On this one car, this one time, you had this particular problem that you're describing, but the majority of what I've seen, that's not an issue. Now there are real issues, but that particular thing you're saying, I haven't seen, or it's something that I'll explore. I mean, so. And again, there are issues, but it's, at least more recently, I've been pushing and probing people on some of them just to see whether or not whether I see it. So, and
Right.
a lot of it gets down to you know uh, owners and people not understanding what it is that they have or what they've done or things like that, or
Yeah.
even something simple like detonation, like what it sounds like, and somebody's like, if I get in, I mean, it's happened to me before. I've gotten in somebody's car and been like, got on it and it just rattles itself, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? What's going on? I'm like, oh, it does that all the time. I'm like, man, it's gonna blow up, like that's cool, but you're not gonna, the car's not gonna survive.
Right.
So, I mean, it's
it's rattling itself to death. It's, if you don't notice that, no wonder you blew up 4 engines before this.
Oh my God.
So, you know what I mean? So, and, keep doing the same thing over and over and over. What exactly are you expecting? So,
Right. Okay. You kind of sort of already answered this, unless if there's anything else you want to bring up. Um, I suppose one of the next big projects would be the next demo car after the R33, but are there any other projects that you want to start or are planning to start or have already started? Word the same
um,
question 3 different ways.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little things I'm working on, but nothing in particular. I mean, I on my blog, I covered some stuff that I, kind of poking and prodding at.
Okay.
There are some things, and I'm not going to cover them.
Okay.
The only thing I want to talk about right now is, well, I'm going to talk about like the Built by Legends car. The Built by Legends, the mines built and built kind of high end, kind of a resto mod R32 GTR.
Okay.
That's I don't know if you've seen the car or seen any of the coverage on the car so far, but it's basically being an R32 that's had a full rotisserie rebuild over in Japan, and Mines has gone through and put some of their latest and greatest stuff in it, and it's had a lot of really special touches. And that car's going to be coming to the U.S. and we are going to have it for sale here. And so
Ooh.
they're going to be building. It's actually the first car is the prototype car, the zero car, and then from that we're going to be building cars for customers based on that, and also they're also working with Spoon on a Civic, a very insane Civic, and then also they have some other cars. They have R33 and some other things we're going to be working on, but we haven't really gone too much further than talking about the R32. So,
Okay.
but it is in the middle of getting its media tour in Japan right now, and then we're going to try to figure out how to get it here to the U.S. because container shipping and everything else is really strange right now. And then after that, we're going to have this really nice Mines built resto mod, basically brand new R32 GTR here. So
Okay. I'm looking it up now because I'm actually quite curious now.
yeah,
Like what the like
I mean
will it
it's got like dry carbon fiber hood, dry carbon fiber front bumper.
Oh,
It's
it looks
got
like one of the original Mines demo cars.
mm-hmm. But it's got modern upgrades, and it's a full rotisserie build plus some other special materials and things that are in there. So
Well, that's
lots of new
fantastic.
parts. Yeah, so that car will be here. It's going to be expensive.
That's fair.
Well, like,
Given what's being done to it and who's involved.
yeah. To give you some perspective, the Nismo is doing a factory restoration on R32s right now, and they're charging $450,000. So,
Woo!
yeah. So, and that's some perspective. And this car is a resto mod. So,
Wow. That's incredible.
it'll
Well,
be here. And
that's a really cool project.
it is a really cool project. And so, we have a few, other things. I mean, we're doing a lot of, buying and storing R34s in Japan for people. We're
I
selling a lot of
figured.
cars for people there, and so, guys like, Dustin Williams,
Yep.
one of our good friends and customers has his R34 there, and we have, several other R34s for people that we are storing for them over in Japan, and for when they turn 25. So there's definitely a lot more interest in doing that recently.
Sure.
So we have a surprising number of customers with them. So
I assume there's a whole bunch of different factors that kind of determine the storage rates in Japan, but my understanding is that storage rates for vehicles in Japan are cheaper than they are in the US. No.
land is more expensive, man.
No.
Yeah, land
Wow.
is more money there in Japan. So they don't have much space. Space is a premium.
Interesting. I always thought it was cheaper to store a car there than it was here. Oh, okay. Okay.
Land
Apparently,
is land is a premium. So,
apparently I've been getting that wrong for like 5 years. It's a good thing I
yeah,
have.
I mean, and it obviously depends on if it's inside, outside, all those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, if you're anywhere where you want it to be stored, and it's relatively safe. So, I mean, the good thing that at least we can do, over in Japan, because we have full facility and full support over there, is we can maintain cars for people. If somebody wants to go over to Japan and drive an R34 that they purchase off of us, I mean, we can make sure it gets registered, and I'll help them go through the process of actually being able to drive the car when they're there.
Yeah.
And so versus like somebody else that may just have it sitting in a field somewhere, we can actually service it. So like our main mechanic, Sato, he worked for Nissan Prince for like 20 years. He has an R32 GTR. He's a GTR guy. So he knows a lot about them, and he's able to, if somebody, again, even if it's a different kind of car, S15 or JZX 100 or whatever it might be, we can still get them all prepared, and so that way then somebody's just not buying something blind, because again, obviously these are 20, 25, 30-year-old cars. If you're buying one off the auction, no matter what it says, there's always when was the last time the oil was changed? When was the last time you know do the headlights work? Like there's a whole list of things. Obviously, does the AC work, or does the heater
Right.
work? Does I mean, there's we go through an extensive list in Japan. We do an extensive in when the car arrives here, and then before it goes out to the customer, we do another extensive, like, check over the car, because again, obviously we're dealing with 25 and 30-year-old cars, and no matter what, these aren't restored, and they aren't, and even if you buy a new car, new cars have issues too.
Yeah.
So the same thing is that, we try to make sure we give the customers a better car. We charge more money, but we try to give everybody a better car. We,
Yeah.
we definitely spend a lot of time and effort on cars, and we definitely spend a lot of time and effort going through the little details, all, interior bulbs, and it just all those like little tiny things that you may, sort of take for granted. We try to make sure we do it. We check all of that stuff. So that way, then, when you get the car, hopefully there's you just have to do whatever if you want to just drive it, you should just be able to drive it. So,
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, that makes
and
perfect sense.
and again, we charge more money, but that's just part of the whole deal, right? So we're not,
Excellent.
yeah, we're not just buying a car and just saying, we're not making, $200 on the deal and ditching it off to you, and now you've got, a car with, non-functioning AC and non-functioning, no head, the headlights don't work, and the, blah blah blah, it starts and
Right.
it runs, but it's making a big knocking sound, and the clutch is slipping. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's always the possibility on all the stuff that somebody bought, at auction. So, sight unseen. So,
I think I think the one last question I really want to ask, just from these notes, because we've covered a lot of good stuff, and I think it would make a cool kind of neat final question.
sure.
A lot of people know about Motor X. They've read the.
Wait, you gotta. I ugh, what do you
Oh,
think?
nice. Oh, that's funny.
Well, here you go. I got the Motor X shirt on. So it was
So,
like a medium, and it didn't fit me before, but I lost about 30 pounds, so now it fits me. It's still a little short, but hey. So
that's cool.
yeah.
So, everyone's read the articles. Everyone's heard all the stories. We're not gonna. I don't really want. We don't need to discuss like how many cars there are or anything like that, or like what happened at Motor X. My question is just from your professional opinion, because you've been in the business for so long. Is would you say that the value of Motor X GTRs are going to change at all as some of their 25-year-old counterparts become 25? Like,
Um,
will they
you
stay
know,
at the
the,
same value or lose it or gain any?
I think it's more just a curiosity now. So the R34s are currently definitely worth more money than a. Yeah, they're worth more money than say even a Midnight Purple or something like that. In
Sure.
the similar range to a to the M spec nerds. The R32s, being around a long time, R32 prices have gone up so much that basically they're similar. 33s, same deal.
Yeah.
Whereas the R33s pretty much Motor X or not, they're worth about the same, similar money. There may be somebody out there that wants a Motor X1 just for some particular reason, but
Right.
overall, other than the curiosity of it, I don't really see, anything in particular, any real reason for somebody to want a car unless it was so. But again, the R34s, yes, because is such a limited number of them, and so there's a pretty hefty premium on those. Now, when they turn 25, I don't know, because the way that 34 prices are looking right now, it's looking like whatever it might be is going to be a pretty significant number. So,
Yeah.
and probably double what most people thought it was going to. Well, I had people telling me that the cars would be 50 grand in 2024, and I'm like, well, good luck trying to find anything that's not completely fucked for you know
Right.
there's stuff that's 100 grand that's fucked. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, even for have you ever even seen anyone try to buy like just a chassis before of one of these cars?
Yeah, so it gets into a weird. I have it on my facts where somebody is asking about chassis and all that, how it works, and like the weird part would be is you imported a chassis, like making it into a car gets really strange, and so I'd rather it be a car. It's just strange if you import it. If you imported it as a chassis, it's not, it's just again, it's just strange. So it's just
Okay.
a weird thing. So
Okay. Well, if there's my phone's gone off into Narnia, but if there's
right.
anything else you would like to
Um, the market is strong right now. It's definitely weird. Obviously with everything COVID related, I thought we'd be sitting here in the dark with the lights off and hoping that people would buy cars. We were off a little bit in the very beginning, and then after that, it's just has been crazy. The demand for these cars is super high,
yeah.
higher than I expected. And we're starting to see more and more. I think that we're going to see even more and more uh, demand as far as like in your 90s cars, because those are the cars that people around my age and in that range, those are the cars that we grew up with, and that it's everything from like Fox body Mustangs to IROCs and Camaros and Trans Ams and stuff like that, where you know those are the cars that people are going to want, because maybe
Yeah.
they're not as interested in the 69 Camaro or the Challenger or something like that, whereas some of these other cars that are in a certain price point, and the Porsches are pretty far out, and Ferraris and stuff like that, but I see the more stuff like this, like these, the different JDM cars and the different Mustangs and the different Camaros and the different Trans Ams being, the next cars that kind of go up from there. So,
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, what you kind of said about how it's kind of what people of like that kind of age range grew up wanting.
right.
I think you like the value of different cars is I think very dependent on that. There's
It
lots of other
is.
factors too, but like for
Right.
instance, like those are the sorts of cars I grew up idolizing. Those are the sorts of cars you were a fan of, and you
Yeah, and
know,
so there's definitely something to be. So kind of where I fell on that, and where I kind of really had a little bit of an epiphany about it, was like I was at an auction a few years ago, and there was like this 1917 Buick Brass Era car, right? Beautiful car, really nice looking car, all that kind of stuff, and it was about $7,000 or $8,000. The thing is, like, it's cool, but I don't really need it for $7,000. Like, that's not very much money, but I'm not interested in it. It's
right,
cool. I appreciate it for what it is, but I would rather spend my $7,000 on something else, right? And in the same token, when it gets into some of the, Camaros and Mustangs and all that stuff. Now, there's certain of those cars that very much interest me. I mean, I love Superbirds and stuff like that. Like, they're
Oh
really
yeah.
cool. They're such a, they're such a strange kind of thing. But only at a certain price point. I mean, I'm not going to pay all the money for one. I'm just not. I like them, but I don't like them that much. I mean,
Right.
and so you're going to run into the same sort of thing where, again, even on these old cars where, where we had like these guys who would buy these old Mustangs and Camaros and stuff, and then they resto mod them, right? Because the original cars aren't really that good. So, they realize, oh, the steering sucks and the engines weren't that good and, the transmission sucks. So I'm going to go and I'm going to spend the money on resto modding it. And so we're going to see all this, that same thing. History repeats itself, and it's going to repeat itself here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true.
It is going to repeat itself. And people are like, there seems to be a lot of people that don't think that. And I'm like, okay, there's going to be somebody out there that there's going to be a Fox Buddy Mustang with 500 miles, and it's going to be 150 or 200 or $300,000 or something silly like that. And somebody's going to say, "Oh, I have one of those, and I sold it for $3,000, 15 years ago." And it's like, yeah, but that's the market today, because there's only 2 or 3 cars out there like this, and there's somebody who wants it really bad,
Yeah.
and you have to want it, and you have to want it, or actually, there's 2 people that want it really bad, and so. If those 2 people are just going to keep bidding on it amongst themselves, then you're not going to be able to get it for $3,000, because the same, I mean, that's a lot of people don't auctions. A lot of people don't understand auction. So if there's an auction and there's something at the auction and it is $1,000, if you want it and I want it and you bid $1,000 on it, I can't bid $1,000 to buy it. I have to bid 1,001 or $1,000 and a penny or $2,000, right? So if I bid $2,000 and you want it, so you bid 3,000, right? And then I say, well, I want it more than you, so I'm going to bid 5,000. Now, so again, just because it started at 1,000, or even if it's sold for 1,000 or whatever at some point in time, at this particular moment in time, in order for me to buy that car, the 2 of us need to stop bidding against each other. And the
Yeah.
thing is that, you end up with this, this energy between people, I guess you could say, at auctions, definitely is that, one guy wants it worse than the other one. And, whose bank is bigger than the other one, or what kind of number is he, what kind of number is he going to spend? And so, because I'll see guys say all the time, "Oh, I would have bought it for that at auction." I said, "No, you wouldn't have, because we would have had to keep bidding. Like, you wouldn't have gotten it for 1,000, because at 1,000, I would have had to bid 1,001, and the other guy would have bid 1,002, and would have kept going until the point where you tell me that you want me to stop.
Right.
When do you want me to stop? Because I can keep going. Because I've got customers that said to me, bid to win. And bid to win means I have no limit. So I've bought cars recently for customers, and the customer told us, bid to win, which means bid, 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 bid. We're not stopping.
Wow. So I guess then the
So,
customer can also say, "Here's the cap" as well.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but exactly, customer says, "Hey, I'm not going to pay any more than." So, you reach a little bit of a weirdness with that, is that, you don't know where anybody's in particular endpoint is, right? So
Hmm.
if it's you, me, it's just say it's just us 2, because it's less complexity. And this car's 10,000, and you just bid 10,000, and your end is 10,000, and my end is 10,000. At some point, I have to, even if I'm buying for you, if I put 10,1, are you going to put 10,2? Even though our cap is 10 grand, right? Your cap, my cap is 10 grand. And for my customer, is my customer going to be pissed off if I tell him, well, it sold for 10,000? Well, I told you my limit was 10,000, right? And it was 10,000. And I wasn't the last. I couldn't go any. You told me that was all I could bid, and that's what I bid, and it sold for 10,000. You know,
Right.
so and our bid wasn't the high, the last bid. So I would have had to bid 10,001. Is that okay? Is 10, and so you reach this like kind of weird area. So you always have to like you have a little leeway, you know,
Sure.
unless the customer is like real hardcore, like that's all he really will spend. But again, if you and me are both on it at 10, you know, if I just had the last bid at 10, you have to decide if you want to bid 10-1
Right.
or 11 or whatever, So are you going to bid 10-1? Am I going to bid, if you bid 10-1, am I going to bid 10-2? And then are you going to bid 10-3? And then where do we stop? So, and that's the thing about, any auction is there's a point where you just, I mean, you're out, right? I mean, that's it. You're out. So, but a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand how auctions work, and everybody has their limit. Everybody has their realistic limit, but yeah, it was kind of crazy having bid to win though.
I bet. Well, I think for anyone, like if I'm sitting there watching or like the stereotypical hold up the sign,
Yep.
it starts to feel kind of unusual if you're doing it for someone else. I feel where you're just saying, okay, I'm just watching the number
Yeah,
go
but
up.
you just you just know where they are and what they want. And obviously, when we do have, when we are buying cars for people at auction and stuff like that, the same, they have some limit, and then there's going to be, because there's always extra fees and everything else associated, right? I mean,
Sure.
especially depending on the more like classic car auctions and stuff like that. I mean, there's buyer fees, there's seller fees, there's you still got all transportation, blah blah blah, all these kinds of things. So just because you bid 10 on the car, well, there's a 10% buyer premium. So then the car's 11 actually. And then let's just say, oh, you told me you're going to pay me 10% too, for being your agent for whatever reason. Let's just say, stuff like that, where like, you don't want to bid, or you want me to bid, or, there's different ways to do all this stuff. And
Yeah.
again, that's some of the kind of negotiations and some of the deals behind things, because obviously, if we're buying because I buy cars to export too, right? And so, and a lot of that stuff's just for like flat fees, and then some of this other stuff, it's more it's percentages based on what the car is. So,
Right.
and handling, depending on what we're handling for somebody and not, because sometimes we handle just a little tiny bit of it, and sometimes we handle everything, from the inspection to obviously moving the car, shipping it, all the way through.
Right.
So there's it can be as complicated or as easy as you want it to be. So some people just want to write a check, and some people want to be involved in it from start to end. So
Yeah. Well, hey, cool. Lots of awesome information. I don't want to take up any more of your day.
sure.
Um, I don't know. Zoom usually cuts me off, but I guess one of us has a membership or something. Usually, it cuts people off after like an hour or something.
Really?
But
I don't know. Yeah, no, not
um,
that as far as I know, but anyway.
well, hey, thank you for your time, man. We've had chats before, and I thought it'd be really cool to do this because our conversations are always very interesting, and you know,
Sure.
I
Well,
I'm a
hopefully,
I'm a
yeah,
secondary source of information, so
right. So hopefully people learn some stuff, and
yeah,
obviously there is information out there. They can't find it themselves, and then but a lot of it's confusing, and again, you're dealing with multiple agencies, multiple things, and so
yeah,
some of it is almost contrary to other information, so
yeah,
contradictory, really. So
yeah.
all right, Tom. I'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you for your time,
Okay.
man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. And now I will say goodbye to you guys. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this as a member, you can watch the full. If you're a member, you get to watch this full interview, mostly full. There might be a couple things cut out, the sound of my child screaming and things like that. But If not, still, thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Sean as well for giving us this awesome information and great conversation. Lots of neat stuff to learn. Obviously, that is not everything you can learn, but, you know, if you ever decide you want to work with Toprank and buy a car, you know, give their company a call, toprank.com, whether you're doing it in the US or Japan. The US site is importavehicle.com. Pretty good URL if you ask me. You'll learn a whole lot more when you decide that you want to get one of these cars. And I'm going to be honest, I really want to do business with them. I mean, obviously, but maybe a lot sooner than you guys are expecting. So, thank you all so much for watching. I am Tom, the Racing Joker. If you like what you have seen so far, but are not subscribed, fix that, because you'll love what I've got planned. Take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.